All right, so in this video, we're gonna talk about graphing lines and whether you pass it on the pretest or not. All right, make sure that you know what slope is and how to find slope and the rise over run definition of slope. So if you just watched that video and did that skill check, you know it. If you passed the pretest on slope, but maybe you want to learn a little bit more, you can always watch that video just to kind of get a quick refresher. All right, but make sure you understand slope before we start talking about graphing lines. All right, so there's a bunch of different forms for graphing line, but the one we're going to focus on in this video and in this learning objective is slope-intercept form, which is the formula y equals mx plus b. All right, so let's go through all the different letters. Well, first off, we'll start with x. It's just the input variable. It's just the kind of thing that goes along the x-axis, so that's never going to change. Y is our output, how far is things going up and down, so that's also not going to change, so it'll always be part of the formula. And then we'll start putting in numbers to represent m. M, like we said in the slope video, always represents slope. And b is going to represent the y-intercept. Y-intercept just means where the line intersects the y-axis. All right, so just knowing these two things, just knowing the slope and the y-intercept of a line is enough to know the whole graph of a line, and that's all we need to know. So that's why we just put these two things into this equation in the correct places, and we get the equation for a line. What we're gonna do in this video is take the equation and graph it. All right, so graph the line y equals 3x minus 2. So I'm just gonna write it a little bit bigger here. All right, so this is what these slope-intercept form lines look like. But if you remember, this is y equals mx plus b. So it's saying m is whatever number is in front of the x, which is 3. So m is 3. All right, b is whatever number that's by itself, which in this case, there's a negative 2. All right, so how do we put this information together to get the graph? Well, generally I'll start with b. All right. B is negative 2. That is my y-intercept, where my graph hits this y-axis. All right, so if I look at my y-axis, I want the intersection point to be negative 2. So I start at 0, go down 2. That's negative 2 on the y-axis. Let's get rid of this little red dot because that's not actually part of our graph. And the other thing we know is our slope is 3. And if you remember from the slope video or just information about slope, slope is rise over run. And just like we were talking about in our fractions unit, a whole number can always be in a fraction by making it 3 over 1. All right, so our rise is 3. So if I go from this point and rise 3, I'm gonna go up 1, 2, 3. And I'm gonna run 1. And I get the next point on my graph. And the nice thing with lines is once you have 2 dots, you just connect them. And there's only one possible line I can draw to connect those 2 dots. And I just keep it going in that direction forever. All right, and that's the whole thing. So this b value is going to tell you the first point. The slope will tell you your rise, and your run will help you get your second point. All right, so here's your turn. Very similar equation, y equals 2x plus 2. So go ahead and try to graph that one now. And here's the solution I came up with. So our b value is 2, so our y-intercept's 2. That's that point here. And then our slope is also 2, but that means 2 over 1. So we rise 2, go over 1. That gives us our second point there. And I just connect them with the only possible line. That makes sense. All right, so that's pretty much all you need to know to graph lines. Now we're just going to throw in some extra things, fractions, negatives, that type of thing. So now if we want to graph this line, again, we know our b value is the number that's by itself. So in this case, it's 1. So that automatically gives me my y-intercept. And my m value, my slope, is negative 3 over 4. So I'm just going to write that down. Negative 3/4. I like to just put the negative on the top to make it negative 3 over 4 because that makes it more obvious that now my rise is negative 3. That means I'm going to go down 3 because negative for y is mean going down. And then run positive 4. 1, 2, 4. All right, to get my next dot, and then I connect them as well. So the only real difference with this problem is that we had a negative value. As you know, whenever there's a negative value, your slope is going to go downward. It's just negative slopes. It goes upward when there's positive slopes. So the fact that there's a negative means my final answer should be going in this kind of down to the right direction. But I know that because this negative here means I'm rising -3, which actually means you're falling 3. All right, so here's your turn to graph the line y equals -1/2 x plus 4. And here's the solution I got. So the y-intercept is 4, and I go down 1 over 2 to get the next dot. So again, compare that answer to your answer. All right, make sure they're similar, or you can kind of figure out where you went wrong. All right, if not, make sure you're asking questions to help you figure out what's going on before you start doing the practice. All right, one thing to note, we've been looking at these equations in slope-intercept form. There's some equations that are not in slope-intercept form, so this is slope-intercept form. You could have a line that looks like this. All right, that's also a linear equation, so when you graph it, it's going to give you a line. We didn't look at how to graph those in these videos, and we're actually not going to do that because we still have to learn how to solve equations. But basically, anytime you can get this y by itself, then it'll be in this form, and you can graph it this way. So if you had this type of equation here, what you could do is get the y by itself, and now it's in our slope-intercept form. So everything you're going to be working with for the practice and the skill check is already in this y by itself form. But just know in the future we might have lines that don't look like that, but we can always make it look like that by solving for y. And we'll talk more about that in future learning objectives. All right, and here's your multiple choice question. There's not a lot of work to do. It's just asking what is the slope of this line. So you don't have to graph it. All right, just what is the slope of this line?